If you have ongoing exposure to controlling people, it's a virtual certainty that you're going to experience blurry boundaries, which is why I've created the extensive online course called This Is Me, Establishing Boundaries with the Controllers in Your Life. There's a link below that will give you all of the details, and I hope that you would find it therapeutic. I want to make you aware of a term that's very necessary for you to understand as you try to work your way through the world of narcissism, and it's the term code switching. Now, every one of us has all sorts of codes that we have that we live by. Some are more strict and some are more loose. Some are very necessary. Some are kind of arbitrary. For example, there are all sorts of codes that we have regarding, let's say, the way that we manage our schedule. Somebody that works at a construction site is going to have a different work code than somebody that works inside a bank. Or somebody that is from a high and uppity kind of society place is going to have different codes that they operate with somebody that just kind of hangs out with the regular Joe and Jane out there. We have different codes, and it's necessary for us to be aware of one another's codes of life so that we can know how to blend with each other. Now, like I say, sometimes the codes that we have are pretty strict. For example, if you grew up in a very strong religious background, there can be codes there. Or sometimes you are inside a political structure and they have real strong codes about how you need to be if you're going to be a member of our party here. Sometimes it can be a cultural kind of thing. For example, if you go overseas, you might find that they have codes regarding the way they dress or food or even the way they manage schedules. And so codes can differ from culture to culture. It may be, for example, you've been invited to someone's house for a holiday and you realize that that family with their deep history has a different way of managing holidays. Their codes aren't the same as what yours are. So you see that there are all sorts of different codes that we operate with. And in the healthiest kind of way, it's going to be necessary for us to have a good understanding of each other's codes and mannerisms. And when necessary, we can even make the switches. For example, if I am that person traveling, I want to know what the codes are in that country are. Or if I'm invited to your house, I'd like to know how your mannerisms. And so it's necessary for you to have that kind of flexibility. Other times you need to know when not to go into somebody else's codes because it would be a violation of yours. So you can see it can be a bit tricky. Now, when we get into the world of narcissism, narcissists have their codes too. And they have their ideas about how things ought to be. And wouldn't you know, their codes are quite self-serving. And so they're going to be not at all bashful about letting you know what the codes are. And then there's another element that we want to be aware of. They like knowing what other people's codes are. And so they're thinking, if I can figure out what your codes are, I'm very willing to do the code switching if I think it gets me an in. For example, you may have somebody that purports to be somebody that follows a very strict moral code, but if they find, well, but I can make money over here, or I can gain political power over here, or I can be in a social group over here, and it might mean that I have to set my code aside to go along with yours. I'm willing to do that kind of code switching. Narcissists, when they do the code switching, it's not for the purpose of just natural blending and flexibility or even empathy. Narcissist code switching has to do much more with manipulation. And then when you're in their presence, they want you to switch your codes to fit them. So it becomes a real messed up kind of a way of doing with them, but they're chameleons and that's how they work. Now, I specifically want you to be aware of the moments when narcissists want you to drop your codes just strictly to go along with them. Like I say, they're willing, they're flexible to drop theirs, and they insist that you do. And so if you decide, well, you know, I see what your codes are, and I don't really know that I want to go along with that, they're not going to like it. But then at some level, you have to decide, well, how far am I willing to go in my code switching? Do I have to just go along with that narcissist? Frankly, if you do, then they're going to be more than willing to give you what their agenda says is supposed to be. And sometimes if you have an appeasing, people-pleasing style, if you feel a bit too weak or you feel like you just have to live in obligation to that narcissist, sometimes you'd be willing, regretfully later on, but to let go of your codes just to get them off your back. And in doing so, you find yourself trying to find favored treatment from that narcissist, and they're more than happy to make you wiggle around with your codes and just go along with theirs. And ultimately, if you wind up shifting your codes to go along with their constantly shifting codes, you wind up not being human. You wind up being robotic in order to stay acceptable or to that narcissist, or as is often the case, to just get them to get off your back and not be angry with you. When you go too deeply into code switching, authenticity goes flying out the window. Narcissists, like I say, they'll code switch. And authenticity is not something they want, and they want you to code switch when it suits their purpose. Let's make sure that fear is not going to be a part of us learning to coordinate with each other. Another person's dominance and control is not healthy when it comes to the decision to do some code switching. You don't want to be reduced to superficiality, which is what narcissists are all about. So that's why I say it's so essential for us to understand code switching. At its very best, it can actually be a form of empathy. If your style is different, sure, I'm willing to learn from you and know what your mannerisms are. I don't have to do everything according to mine. But the narcissist, with their manipulation, it's like, well, that's exactly the kind of person I want to work with. And it's like, but wait a minute, I don't want to have to just completely lose myself either. So we want to do the code switching when it's reasonable, but we want to stay away from a narcissist's dysfunctions. So there are some certain truths that I want us to hold on to as we try to figure out when it's right to do the code switching and when it's not going to be reasonable at all. First and foremost, when you try to code switch too much to keep the narcissist off your back, and you just think, okay, I'll drop my codes to go along with them, you wind up actually becoming trauma bonded with them because you have more and more of a feeling of being tied to someone that you don't even agree with their lifestyle. That's not something that we want to do. So excessive code switching actually can become traumatic in the sense that you wind losing yourself. Also, another truth that we want to hold on to, and that is, if you doing some code switching requires you to silence the real you just in order to have conformity, but in doing so, you just feel like you're being quite phony, that's not a good motivation for you to go off of as well. So let's keep in mind that if you are going to have the code switching in its proper way, you want to make sure you're doing it as a free agent, not as somebody who is being duty bound or being driven towards it because of fear or duty or obligation. Coordination is good up to a point. You want coordination to be something that contributes to the well-being of all individuals involved. And if you're code switching in order to curry someone's favor falsely, if you're code switching in order to keep somebody from being angry with you, then chances are you're getting mixed up in some very unsavory kind of schemes, and it's not going to go well for you at all. So make certain that as you try to figure out, well, what are your codes? And what are your mannerisms? And what are your norms and your culture and your subcultural kind of things? Make sure that you're doing it for healthy reasons. When the narcissist comes along and you see that they're willing to play that in a very manipulative kind of way, it's like, no, I'm not doing that. And especially when they want you to drop your codes and go along with them, it's like, no, that's not a healthy use of that kind of information at all. We need codes. We need systems that will help guide us. Sometimes we need to have flexibility. It all depends on the situation as we try to learn how to maneuver with one another in codes. but we need to do so in such a way where your own self-respect and your own honor is intact, and it's not part of somebody's nefarious, manipulative schemes. So I'm hoping you can understand what this is all about, and in doing so, stay true to yourself, be flexible, but then you don't want to be a part of anybody, any narcissist's attempts to say, I'm going to squelch you and turn you into a flying monkey and someone that has to do my bidding. No, that's when you know that it's gone too far. I hope the information like this gives you some good food for thought. If you've not already subscribed, I would encourage you to do so. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell that goes along with it. I'm so pleased that you allow me to be on your journey with you. If you have a need for therapy, and many times when you are zeroing in on these kinds of touchy kind of topics, it's good to have somebody that can help you sift through and sort out what your issues are. We have a sponsor that would take you to online therapy. There's a whole team of licensed professional therapists that you could choose from. And so if the need is there, I'd encourage you to go beneath and go through the link that we have provided there for you. In addition, I have my courses, and these are extensive courses with multiple videos and written materials and questions that go along with each of the lessons, and relative to setting boundaries, finding yourself, and then we're going to have other courses coming along very soon. And so you have the links below that will take you to our courses. In addition, we have my books and other resources below. Code switching can be a healthy kind of ingredient. Code switching in the wrong hands or with the wrong motives can be something that's disastrous. So I hope that you understand the difference between the healthy versus unhealthy. And in doing so, it establishes the possibility for you to remain an objective and a steady person. And ultimately, I'm hoping you can remain a person that stands for dignity, respect, and civility. That's what we are here, that we stand for here on Team Healthy. I so want those to be core ingredients for you.